Reading through the Bible in 1 year, August 29th, 1 Samuel 21 through 22, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Ezekiel 1, and Psalm 37. Then David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech came trembling to meet David, and said to him, Why are you alone, and no one with you? And David said to Ahimelech the priest, Well, the king has commissioned me with a matter, and has said to me, Let no one know anything about the matter which I am sending you, and with which I have commissioned you. And I have directed the young men to a certain place. Now he's lying. He should not be saying this. It's being done for his own personal safety. I understand that. But this is still something that he shouldn't be doing as the person who is after God's own heart. But we continue. Now, therefore, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever can be found. Well, the priest answered David and said, There is no ordinary bread on hand, but there is the consecrated bread. This is the bread of the presence, which sits on the little altar in the holy place, not the most holy place, but in the holy place, directly in front of the, directly in front of the curtain that goes into the Holy of Holies. So this is, you have 12 loaves. They're made fresh once a week and placed there, and then it's for the priests only to eat that bread, right? Because it's a consecrated holy bread. This is what Jesus is talking about with the religious leaders when they're like, oh, well, David never did anything wrong. It's like, well, remember, when they were bringing up the fact that the disciples of Jesus were walking through the fields on the Sabbath and grabbing heads of grain and rubbing it in their hands and eating it. Well, they saw that as work. So therefore they were violating the Sabbath law. And that's the same point where Jesus declares himself to be the Lord of the Sabbath, and that the Sabbath itself was created as a rest for man, and it's not meant to be something that oppresses man. Man was created for the Sabbath, not the Sabbath for man. No, other way around. Anyway, hi. Let's go ahead and continue. So the priest answered, said there's no ordinary bread, right? But there is consecrated bread if only the young men who are going with him have kept themselves from women. Well, David answered the priest and said to him, Surely women have been kept from us as previously, when I set out, and the vessels of the young men were holy. Though it was an ordinary journey, how much more than today will their vessels be holy? So the priest gave him the consecrated bread, for there was no bread but the bread of the presence, which was removed from before the Lord in order to put hot bread in its place when it was taken away. Now, the priest gave him consecrated, I already read that. And now one of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherds. David said to Ahimelech, Now is there not a spear or sword on hand? For I brought neither my weapons nor my sword with me, because the king's matter was urgent. Well, the priest said, The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, behold, it is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you would take it for yourself, take it. For there is no other except it here. And David said, There is none like it. Give it to me. Then David arose and fled that day from Saul, and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, Is this not David, the king of the land? Did not they sing of this one as they danced, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? Well, David took these words to heart, and greatly feared Achish, king of Gath. So he disguised his sanity before them, and acted insanely in their hands, and scribbled on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva run down onto his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, Behold, you see the man behaving as a madman. Why do you bring him to me? He's like, I don't care. Do I lack madmen that you have brought this one to act the madman in my presence? Shall this one come into my house? So David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and all his father's household heard of it, they went down there to him. everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented gathered to him. These are those who were discontented with the rule of Saul. They were in debt to Saul, right? And he became captain over them. Now there were about 400 men with him. And David went out from there to Mizpah of Moab. And he said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and my mother come and stay with you until I know what God will do for me." Then he left them with the king of Moab and stayed with him all that time that David was in the stronghold. The prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold. Depart, go into the land of Judah." So David departed and went into the forest of Hereth. Then Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered. Now Saul was sitting in Gibeah under the tamarisk tree on the height with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing around him. And Saul said to his servants who stood around him, "Hear now, O Benjaminites, what will the son of Jesse give to all you? Will the son of Jesse give to all of you fields and vineyards?" These are the promises he's making to them if they stay loyal to him and not go after David. "Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? For all of you have conspired against me, so that there is no one who discloses to me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. And there is none of you who is sorry for me or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in ambush, as it is this day." Again, this is what he thinks. He's assuming these things of the people, and he's assuming these things of David. This is part of that evil spirit that God has sent to him to make him feel like this all the time. This is that struggle he's having right now because he's afraid for not only his own legacy, his kingship, right? Because God has taken away his anointing for leadership that's been taken from him and given to David instead. But there's also the fact that he's worried about that legacy of his, that his children will no longer be kings. He had kind of grown accustomed to the idea that he's now going to be king, and his family are going to be kings in perpetuity, right? Because that's how it works in the rest of the groups. So they're like, sweet. So he was thinking, okay, my son is going to be, he's going to be the next king, and then my grandson will be the next king, and my great-grandson will be the next king, and it will follow through his line. So that's what he was afraid of when God had taken that away from him. Then Doeg the Edomite, who was standing by the servants of Saul, said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub. He inquired of the Lord for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent someone to summon Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's household, the priests who were in Nob, and all of them came to the king. They had no idea what was happening, so he went to him and assumed that, oh, okay, we're going to go see the king, whatever. Saul said, "Listen now, son of Ahitub." And he answered, "Here I am, my lord." Then Saul said to him, "Why have you and the son of Jesse conspired against me, in that you have given him bread and a sword and inquired of God for him, so that he would rise up against me by lying in ambush as it is this day?" Again, he's assuming things he doesn't know. Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, and who among all your servants is as faithful as David, even the king's son-in-law, who is captain over your guard and is honored in your house? Did I just begin to inquire of him inquire of God for him today? Far be it from me. He's basically saying, look, I've done this a bunch of times for him. He's one of the highest people in your entire court. Of course I'm going to do this for him. Do not let the king impute anything to his servant or to any of the household of my father, for your servant knows nothing at all of this whole affair. But the king said, "You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's household." And the king said to all the guards who were attending him, "Turn around and put the priests of the Lord to death, because their hand is also with David, and because they knew that he was fleeing and did not reveal it to me." But the servants of the king were not willing to put forth their hands to attack the priests of the Lord, knowing full well that their king is just nuts. So then the king said to Doeg, You turn around and attack the priests. And Doeg the Edomite, who's not of the people of Israel, right? He turned around and attacked the priests. And he killed that day 85 men who wore the linen ephod. Again, these are priests of God who have done nothing wrong. They have now slain innocent blood as a direct command from the king of Israel. And he struck Nob, the city of the priests, with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and infants. Also oxen, donkeys, and sheep he struck with the edge of the sword. The same thing he was commanded to do to the enemies of God and refused to do so. Sure, he killed the ugly things, the things that weren't profitable, right? But now he's doing the same thing he was commanded against people who are wholly innocent in this matter. They have nothing to do with this. But one son of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord simply for giving him bread and giving him a sword. Then David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I have brought about the death of every person in your father's household. This is something that's weighing heavily on his heart and continues to weigh heavily on him going forward. It's basically from this moment on, you'll see him change the way that he handles himself. Before, he was acting crazy, doing whatever he felt like, right? In order to secure his own safety, lying, right, to the priest of God to give him what he needed. But now he's understanding that his actions have direct consequences. Stay with me. Do not be afraid, for he who seeks my life seeks your life, for you are safe with me. Now he's promising that he's going to take care of him, whatever it may come from Saul's household, which I think is only the right thing to do, but all right, let's go ahead and move on. That's all the notes. Bring up the rest there. There we go. All right, let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Paul continues. And I, brethren, could not speak to you as spiritual men. That's people who are mature in their faith. But as to men of flesh, as to infants in Christ, I gave you milk to drink, not solid food, for you are not able to receive it. Indeed, even now you are not yet able, for you are still fleshly. For since there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not fleshly? And are you not walking like mere men? For when one says, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are you not mere men? What then is Apollos? And what is Paul? Servants, through whom you believed. Like we're slaves. We're slaves of God, that's all. Even as the Lord gave opportunity to each one. God, you didn't obtain your ability to become a Christian based on your eloquent speech or on any good thing you did. He's chastising them for the way that they're handling this, right? They're trying to elevate one over another because of the person through whom they heard the gospel. I see Christians do this today when they brag about like which pastors they've heard or which books they've read or what. Look, we're all servants. That's it. I'm a servant of God. You're a servant of God. Go and serve your king and die. That's what we're to do. That's it. Preach the gospel, die, and be forgotten. That's a quote from a guy named Count something von Zinzendorf. I'm terrible with his name, but it's something like that. But that's the quote, right? That's what we're supposed to do. We are merely servants. None of us is more worthy or greater than anyone else. We're just servants of God. And that's the point that he's making. It's like, look, I planted, I gave you the gospel. Apollos came by and he watered, right? He poured into the same work that was being done, but it's God who is causing the growth. So then neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but it is God who causes the growth. Now, he who plants and he who waters are one. Look, planting and watering is the same type of work, but each one will have his own reward according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers, and you are God's field, God's building. Now he swaps to a different type of analogy here. The first one was planting and growing. Now he's talking about building something, right? Like you would for a house, right? According to the grace of God, which was given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation. He laid the foundation of the gospel of God, that other people would come through and build on it. And that's exactly what's happening. Another is building on it. But each man must be careful how he builds on it. For no man can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Again, John 14:6. No one comes to the Father except through me. Our foundation in our Christian identity is on Jesus Christ and his work on our behalf alone. There's nothing else that we can build on. There's nothing else that we can start with. That is the plain foundation for every Christian. And if your foundation isn't in this, if it's on your own good works perhaps, or because you've dedicated yourself to serving God, or you've done this or that or the other, if your foundation is not in Jesus Christ alone, then you're not a Christian. That's the way it is. Now, if any man builds on this foundation, right, on this foundation of Jesus Christ with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, each man's work will become evident, for the day, this is the day of Jesus coming back, will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire. This is that testing by fire. And the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. If any man's work, which he has built on it, remains, well, he will receive a reward, right? For that which he's building on his own foundation. If any man's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved. Why? Because he has that foundation of Christian faith. Yet as so through fire. So he will be saved, but it's going to be rough, right? Because he's applying other things on top of that, which are basically worthless endeavors. Do you not know that you are a temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If any man destroys the temple of God, God will destroy him. For the temple of God is holy, and that is what you are. Again, we have that same foundation, right? That's foundation of our Christian identity, which is based in Christ alone. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you thinks that he is wise in this age, again, this is talking about that worldly wisdom, right, that comes from the world itself, he must become foolish. Again, the term used here literally means stupid, right? Utterly abandon the worldly ideas that you have in your head for how things are supposed to work. Why? Here's that "so that" again, which we see repeated throughout this book. So that, or for the purpose that he becomes wise. Wise in true wisdom from God. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness before God. For it is written, he is the one who catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the reasonings of the wise, that they are useless. So then, let no one boast in men, for all things belong to you. Whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come, all things belong to you. And you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. All right, let's move to Ezekiel chapter 1. All right, and since we're in a new book, let's read the introduction. Ezekiel, a prophet and priest, was exiled to Babylon in 597 BC. His ministry extended over at least 23 years. The book opens with his first dramatic vision of the likeness of the Lord himself. Ezekiel was keenly aware of God's presence and power in human affairs. He addressed both the exiles and the people left in Judah with messengers of warning and judgment, predicting the fall of Jerusalem. So he went over with the first group of Israelites, right? Not those part of the group of those who were left in these, I forget if it's the northern or southern kingdom. It's the one where it's just Judah by itself. We'll get to the story behind that later and how Israel separates into the 10 tribes versus the one tribe. Remember, because the Levites, the 12th tribe, were those who were designated to just serve before God as priests. So, well, there was the separation of Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So I guess it really was 11 and 1. But anyway, regardless. So you had Israel separate itself from Judah, right? Israel went directly into wanton idolatry, and things went really bad for them initially. So they were the ones who continued down that path, and they were the first ones to be sent to Babylon and to be captured and taken over by the Chaldeans, leaving Judah left, right? So Ezekiel is a part of those who were out of that first group, right? And after Jerusalem's fall in 586, Ezekiel prophesied hope and reassurance for the people of Judah, right? Who had then lost the focus of God's covenant, the temple in Jerusalem. His vision of the Valley of Dry Bones in chapter 37 is a classic picture of God's ability to renew his people. All right, let's go into the text. Now, it came about in the 13th year, on the 5th day of the 4th month, while I was by the river Chebar among the exiles, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. On the 5th of the month, in the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's exile, the word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel the priest, son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar. In there, the hand of the Lord came upon him. Basically saying that this is when he was anointed as a prophet. As I looked, behold, a storm wind was coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing forth continually, and a bright light all around it. In its midst, something like glowing metal in the midst of the fire. Within it there were figures resembling 4 living beings. And this was their appearance. They had a human form. Each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like a calf's hoof, and they gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, were human hands. As for the faces and the wings of the four of them, their wings touched one another. Their faces did not turn when they moved; each went straight forward. As for the form of their faces, each had the face of a man, and all 4 had the face of a lion on the right and the face of a bull on the left, and all 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each had 2 touching another being, and 2 covering their bodies. And each went straight forward. Wherever the Spirit was about to go, they would go, without turning as they went. In the midst of the living beings, there was something that looked like burning coals of fire, like torches darting back and forth among the living beings. The fire was bright, and lightning was flashing from the fire. And the living beings ran to and fro like bolts of lightning. Now, as I looked at the living beings, behold, there was one wheel on the earth beside the living beings for each of the 4 of them. The appearance of the wheels and their workmanship was like a sparkling beryl, and all 4 of them had the same form, their appearance and workmanship being as if one wheel were within another. Whenever they moved in any of their four directions without turning as they moved. As for their rims, they were lofty and awesome. Awesome here meaning like full of awe, right? And the rims of all four of them were full of eyes round about. Whenever the living beings moved, their wheels moved with them. Whenever the living beings rose from the earth, the wheels rose also. Wherever the Spirit was about to go, they would go up in that direction, and the wheels rose close beside them. And the Spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. Whenever those went, these went. Whenever those stood still, these stood still. And whenever these rose from the earth, the wheels rose close beside them. For the Spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. Now, over the heads of the living beings, there was something like an expanse, like the awesome gleam of crystal, spread out over their heads. Under the expanse, their wings were stretched out straight, one toward the other. Each one also had two wings covering its body on the one side and on the other. I also heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of abundant waters as they went, like the voice of the Almighty. A sound of tumult, like the sound of an army camp. Whenever they stood still, they dropped their wings. And there came a voice from above the expanse that was above their heads. Whenever they stood still, they dropped their wings. Now, above the expanse that was over their heads was something resembling a throne, like lapis lazuli in appearance. And on that which resembled a throne, high up, was a figure with the appearance of a man. Then I noticed from the appearance of his loins and upward something like glowing metal that looked like fire all around within it. And from the appearance of his loins, and downward, I saw something like fire, and there was a radiance around him. As the appearance of the rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. When I saw it, I fell on my face and heard a voice speaking. And tomorrow we get to learn about his call as a prophet. All right, let's move on to Psalm 37. Do not fret because of evildoers. Be not envious of toward wrongdoers, for they will wither quickly like the grass, and fade like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Why will he give you the desires of your heart? Because when you delight yourself in the Lord, your desires will be the same as his desires. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord, and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who carries out wicked schemes. Cease from anger, and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to wrongdoing. For evildoers will be cut off. But those who wait for the Lord, they will inherit the land. Yet a little while, and the wicked man will be no more. And you will look carefully for his place, and he will not be there. But the humble will inherit the land, and will delight themselves in abundant prosperity. The wicked plots against the righteous, and gnashes at him with his teeth. The Lord laughs at him, for he sees his day coming. The wicked have drawn the sword and bent their bow, to cast down the afflicted and the needy, to slay those who are upright in conduct. The sword will enter their own heart, and their bows will be broken. Better is the little of the righteous than the abundance of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked are broken, but the Lord sustains the righteous. The Lord knows the days of the blameless, and their inheritance will be forever. They will not be ashamed in the time of evil, and in the days of famine, they will have an abundance. But the wicked will perish, And the enemies of the Lord will be like the glory of the pastures. They vanish like smoke when they vanish, or rather, they vanish like smoke, they vanish away. The wicked borrows but does not pay back. But the righteous is gracious and gives. He doesn't lend it, he just gives it to people. For those blessed by him will inherit the land, but those cursed by him will be cut off. The steps of a man are established before the Lord, and he delights in his way. When he falls, he will be hurled he will not be hurled headlong, because the Lord is the one who holds his hand. I have been young and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his descendants begging bread. All day long he is gracious and lends. His descendants are a blessing. Depart from evil and do good, so you will abide forever. For the Lord loves justice and does not forsake his godly ones. They are preserved forever, but the descendants of the wicked will be cut off. The righteous will inherit the land and dwell in it forever. The mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The law of God is in his heart. His steps do not slip. The wicked spies upon the righteous and seeks to kill him. The Lord will not leave him in his hand. Or let him be condemned when he is judged. Wait for the Lord and keep his way, and he will exalt you to inherit the land. Where the wicked are cut off, you will see it. Or when the wicked are cut off, you will see it. I have seen a wicked, violent man, spreading himself like a luxuriant tree in its native soil. Then he passed away, and lo, he was no more. I sought for him, but he could not be found. Mark the blameless man, and behold the upright. For the man of peace will have a posterity, but transgressors will be altogether destroyed. The posterity of the wicked will be cut off, but the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their strength in the time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them, because they take refuge in him. That's all for today. We'll, by God's grace, be back tomorrow. Behold the word of the Lord.